Welcome back to Arts and Crafts with Simple SCOTUS. Today, we're going to be talking about a case used in the Nuremberg trials by the Nazis to justify their war crimes and their sterilization campaign in the 30s. And it's just a horrific story, to be honest. There's not much lightheartedness here. But I'll try my best. So, as always, now these are we'll get to these different cases. I was gonna do all of these cases in one video. I don't think it's possible, because just getting into Buck v. Bell, like while I was reading into it, I was like, okay, this is gonna take more than 10 minutes to explain, and I don't want to make a 40-minute video. So Carrie Buck is who this case centered around. She's this woman from Charlottesville, Virginia, and at the time she was 18, I believe. And Virginia had just passed this sterilization law that said that if someone is feeble-minded, is what they would say. Basically, if they have a mental handicap or deemed by the state to be a moron or an imbecile, they had different rankings for these. So, Virginia would do medical tests to determine your mental age. Ridiculous tests, by the way. I don't know specifics, but I remember from when I was looking into this, just the questions are quite absurd. Carrie Buck had grown up in a foster family because her mom was also deemed to be feeble-minded, and so she was sent to the state colony for epileptics and feeble-minded. So this is Carrie Buck, and in this picture, actually, this picture is taken with her mom beside her. I think it's on this side, but her mom's beside her in this picture, and it's actually on the grounds of the state colony, which is basically this mental institution that they've set up. So Dr. Pretty is running this state colony, and he's a firm believer in eugenics. He's a firm believer in the idea that you can weed out entire generations of imbeciles, of people who are deemed to be at a lower mental age. And there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to America and eugenics, because it goes on. We'll get there. Yeah, this Virginia law basically says that if you are mentally impaired, you're deemed to be deficient mentally, it's legal to forcibly sterilize you, so they could just perform an operation on you against your will. And this is the 1920s we're talking about. So even if it were a procedure with modern medicine, it'd still be horrible, but especially in the 1920s, very invasive. And essentially what they would do for women is they would cauterize the fallopian tubes, and you would need weeks to recover. So I shouldn't have to explain why it's wrong, but it was a compulsory sterilization. And Dr. Pretty connects this to Carrie's mother, and he says she was a prostitute, and was of 8 years mentally in age, 8 years. Not any evidence really of this. Mostly just, this is a poor white family living in Virginia, and they were deemed to be fuck-ups. So this idea is, well, just deal with the lineage, and you'll eliminate further generations. Everyone will improve, or the body of people as a whole, the gene pool will improve if we just kill all the poor, stupid white people. as I was saying, Carrie's mother is already in this colony, and so she's raised with foster parents, and her foster parents put her into the state colony. So they were. It's not like she was born in the state colony and it had always been her. She was given away to another family, and that family chose as well to institute her. And their reasoning behind it for putting her in the state colony was that she was just impossible to govern, just reckless and on the town and ungovernable. So Buck was actually in school. Carrie Buck was in school until 6th grade. And she was deemed by teachers to be an average student. I mean, she got grades that were on par with most other students. But the other reason that the foster parents gave was that she had an illegitimate child, and she was having a child out of wedlock, and that's why she should be put into the institution. It turns out that the adopted mother's nephew had raped Carrie Buck, and that's how she became pregnant with this child. And so, just a series of, I wouldn't say unfortunate events, because it's just cruelty and yeah. And this is only the beginning for her. So she's raped and has this child. Actually, I don't think she had the child yet, but ultimately this child is obviously not raised with Carrie Buck. She was originally promised, as part of her agreeing to sterilization, that, well, once you're out, you can go back with your foster parents and they will have the child, so you can still be with your child. That never happened. This illegitimate child goes to school eventually. This is after the case. We're jumping ahead here, but it's important to mention here because she would go to school. She would earn above average. She was on the honor roll until she died of measles at 8 years old, this child. And I only mention that because it is a way of refuting. Not that I need to refute, I think, why eugenics is wrong. But clearly, there was no... I mean, the child was doing better than other students at school. So, that doesn't sound very mentally deficient to me. And same with Carrie Buck. She was performing well in school, but she was pulled out of school in 6th grade by her foster parents to work in the house. And she did this for most of her life after. She worked in Holmes, and it's really a life robbed of any opportunity. So because of this child she gave birth to, she was deemed promiscuous as well. And another part of that is her mom was deemed promiscuous. So that was used as well. Her mom was. So knowing what we know about genes and genetics, she must be as well. And so Pretty would actually target girls like this. Had a history of wanting to sterilize teenagers who were boy crazy and who were like oversexed, I think is a word he used. Oversexed. So he would target girls. It's just bizarre. And so, mind you, there's no ACLU at this time, so... Well, I think it had just been founded at this point, but it was full of eugenicists, and a lot of progressives in the United States were eugenicists. And we'll see that. But, so Irving Whitehead is this former superintendent of the state colony, is appointed to defend Carrie Buck in court. And he does an abysmal job, obviously. He's a eugenicist himself. He's former head of the place that has locked up generations of her family at this point. So yeah, there's no... He served a seat. He filled a seat that needed to be filled for this to be deemed a legitimate case. She was defended. But you read through the Supreme Court ruling, and it gives you the breakdown of both arguments, and he does a horrible job. He doesn't cite really much precedent. He doesn't interview anyone that knew her. He didn't call any witnesses to defend her. He didn't call teachers to say, how was she in school? No. And so Pretty is arguing in court. He says in court, not in the Supreme Court, but in one of the lower courts, that she had a rather badly framed face. This is used as evidence in a court case in the United States. So you have on the court Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., and he's someone who places like Harvard Law School really, really love him. Or at least they used to. I don't know how they are now. But based on what I've read from historians that have looked at this case, you have an exalting of people like Oliver Wendell Holmes. And you also have Louis Brandeis on the court at this time. This very prominent progressive jurist, and who's also Jewish in the time where eugenics is being propelled mostly by an anti-Semitism in Europe. And you could talk, I mean, it's way beyond this as well. I mean, scientific racism has been a thing for forever in the United States, since its founding. And you also had former president and now Chief Justice Howard Taft, who is sitting on the court. And the ruling is 8-1 against Carrie Buck. 8-1. So this progressive Brandeis sides with Holmes, who writes a horrific opinion. Really disgusting. And they're open supporters of eugenics. Taft is an open supporter of eugenics. And it was deemed in the opinion, and there's no dissent in this. There's one judge who's Catholic who didn't agree with the court but didn't write an explanation. But judging on the fact that he was Catholic, there is a large Catholic opposition to eugenics. There is large Catholic states that would reject eugenics bills, mostly on that grounds. That the Catholic view of the world is very internal of the person, instead of, which has its own problems, of course, but they were like, external and appearance, and that doesn't really matter to us as much as your decisions that you make in your life, which again has its limits and it has its problems. But that's why there's that one dissent, allegedly. No one really knows. He didn't explain. But it is really disturbing that someone like Oliver Wendell Holmes, who again he was on the year before this, he was on Time magazine, on the front page of Time magazine, and was deemed one of the greatest legal minds in America. And he's still, I mean, again, I don't know how up to date these observations are, but very exalted in a lot of law schools. And I'm cutting a lot better this time. There you go. So that's Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. All right, let's get into his opinion. Got some quotes in here. So he starts by saying that one's lineage has an important part to play in the transmission of insanity and imbecility. He says that we have seen more than once that the public welfare may call upon the best citizens for their lives. He's saying we've made people go to war. We've made people go to war and risk their lives. Those are the best citizens of our country. It would be strange if it could not call upon those who already sapped the strength of the state in order to prevent our being swamped with incompetence. Yeah. So he's saying we need to get rid of these generations that rely on the state. Again, not much of an argument to be made there with Carrie Buck, as someone who was literally never given an opportunity by anyone. And if anything, she was forcibly put into state facilities for taxpayers to pay for her. This is a self-inflicted everything by Virginia. And it's based on nothing. It's based on nothing. No justice here. And then this is what we should remember, honestly, is that these are not issues you can compromise about. When you're talking about the existence of people, there's no room for compromise on this. Because even when this becomes a debate, and you hear this is in the last video, we talked about gay marriage, how Scalia is saying it's the greatest thing of democracy to debate gay marriage. But there are certain things that you cannot compromise on. You can't compromise on whether people should exist or not. But even when it becomes a debate, we've already lost, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And that sounds, authoritarian and anti-democracy, but again, there's certain things that don't need to be up for debate, such as the existence of people. And once you start to compromise with people that believe that trans people aren't even real, you've lost already. You have already lost. And in 50 years from now, or 100 years from now, unless the fascists win, you're going to look awful if you even compromise on this. Because how ridiculous do these people look now? When you look back and say, how could you ever believe that that a group of people shouldn't exist? I mean, it's right there. And if you can't see the parallels, I'm concerned about how you interact with people in the real world. Do you acknowledge people as fully human all the time? If you're willing to cast aside and ship them off to El Salvador, or do any of the other inhumane things that the Trump administration is doing to people it disagrees with or finds threatening. But you cannot compromise, because you get stuff like this. Anyway, that's my speech. Good speech. So the argument that Carrie's lawyer made, it's not real. Like, this is not even a real case. It's not a real court case. She's not being defended by anyone that cares about her. And this is still on the law. It's still the law, by the way. This has never been overturned. There was another case a few years on that, I think it was another state's sterilization law, that was partially repealed, Buck v. Bell. But they didn't explicitly overturn it. So this is still the law, and it's been cited. It's been cited since. It's not like it's gone away, or that people just kind of shut up about it. No, there's still there's still judges that will cite this. I don't know how recently, but with the way things are going, they will go back as far as they need to go. They'll go back to 1790 if they have to. So, anyway, the reason that the court said that she doesn't have a right to due process is because she had a hearing, and they tested it. They tested her. So that's due process. And it's not an equal protection violation because, well, she was already in the state penitentiary, so we've already deemed her to be, not capable of full protection under the law. And this is how things go. Once you have an oppressive law in the books, it will beget other things. It will beget other ways of oppression. Because it builds on itself. Oppression builds on itself. And that's what they did. Because what argument am I supposed to make to that? Well, yeah, you did put me in the state penitentiary, but why the fuck am I even there to begin with? You already lost at that point because the state's already deemed that was fine to begin with. So what's the consequence of this? Well, let me write down. So that's pretty much it. It's hard to make this funny. It's really hard. It's really difficult. But I guess the humor lies in, like, wow, we are fucked. We're fucked. But we're not done yet. Oh, no. Okay, so the result of this, what happens after? Well, 24 states passed sterilization laws after this. 24 states. And so ultimately around 60 to 70,000 people were forcibly sterilized. A lot of them, a non-insignificant amount, didn't even know they were being sterilized. Wait, sorry, this is me editing it, but I forgot to mention her sister, Carrie Buck's sister, went in for an operation and was just sterilized. And no one told her. The government forcibly sterilized her. And she tried for years to have a kid with her husband. And she didn't know why it wouldn't work. Well, it turns out she went to the doctor and they're like, someone did an operation on you. She's like, oh, that was just my, this some other medical procedure that they did on me at the state colony. Horrible. They would go in for operations or been told, this is what you're going in for. And then would try to have kids for decades. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's really, this is our government that did this. To its own citizens. And the racial element of it is interesting as well because it was mostly targeting white, lower class people, mostly women. And it's interesting because why wasn't this used for other races? Well, they'd already deemed that white people were superior, so why even worry about improving the gene pool of any other group of people? So what they did was they segregated white people and black people, and they said, well, who gives a fuck what happens to them? We have to improve our gene pool. And that's what they did. So they targeted poor white people. And the other element of it is people like Holmes are these really elitist legal minds who believed that they were better than other people simply because of their knowledge of things. And so, of course, he's going to have this, well, I'm inherently better than you, so why would you ever have kids? That's it. And many of these sterilization laws are never repealed. They're still in the books. And sterilization still happens in our prisons. I mean, there's women sterilized in American prisons. And if you don't believe me, you can look that up. You can look that up for yourself. And so the other really disturbing part is that these laws were not inspired by Nazis, they inspired the Nazis. These are laws that the Nazis went to and said, that is the model of how we should do it. That is exactly how we should do it. And they would contact people like Purdy, who I didn't mention, but Purdy had passed away. Not Purdy. He had passed away before the case had reached Supreme Court. So this is Bell is the other superintendent of the state colony. And months after this, Carrie Buck is sterilized by John Bell. And just thinking about that procedure, after going through months of a completely illegitimate court proceedings and having no one to defend you, no one in your corner, your existence, like it is for trans people today, was literally public debate. It was on. People would just talk about it like we talk about trans people today. It's really not that far of a leap. Okay, same questions about existence. Anyway, so the Nazis used these laws to model their own, and they would contact the doctors who were perpetrating this eugenics, and they would honor them in Nazi Germany a year after the Jews had already been wiped out from public life. Yeah. And coming to terms with that is fairly important, I think, in understanding where we are today as well. American fascism is always been lingering, obviously. But it doesn't even take a fascist to be a fascist. You had Brandeis and former president and a great legal mind recognized by a lot of law schools as one of the top Supreme Court justices, writing these dehumanizing things, and it was mainstream. And so, I mean, there's definitely things that I think about when it comes to like abortion, for example. When it comes to eugenics and abortion, that can be a very difficult conversation to have, because at the end of the day, abortion should not be used to eradicate Down syndrome, which, when you do these prenatal screenings and they immediately recommend an abortion, it's hard to incorporate that. And also, when you use abortion as, well, a lot of people can't afford to have children, which is true. But should that be the solution? Should that really be the solution to a child poverty problem? No. It's a symptom of a larger thing. And so you can still have those conversations and be supportive of abortion rights, and also be aware that, I mean, Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. And I know that's used to delegitimize Planned Parenthood, right or wrongfully, in my opinion, because I don't think that's the point of abortion rights in the fight for abortion rights today. It is a personal autonomy issue, and it's actually ironic because this case was cited in Roe. Pro-life people would think, oh, it was used to justify abortion, because this is a horrendous eugenics law. No, it was used against abortion rights, because it said, well, we've already established that we can impose on bodily autonomy in Buck v. Bell. We can impose on you. The state can do whatever it wants as long as it has an interest in the greater good. So it's used against abortion rights. And there's also a case called Jacobson v. Massachusetts, which is about forced sterilization or forced vaccination. And again, when you get into bodily autonomy issues, these same things are always going to come up. But I think it is important to keep in mind when you're talking about abortion rights, for example, when you frame it like an anti-poverty thing, you're getting into some scary weeds there. That's not the argument for abortion that needs to be made. Anyway. And so at the Nuremberg trials, I guess I'll close with this, but it was cited explicitly at the Nuremberg trials when you had SS officers on trial. They would say, they would read out, they read out this one quote. I shall read one more quote. Sorry. But they would read out this is the second to last paragraph. And Holmes says, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. And they read that out. They read this case in that line, saying, well, this is one of your great legal scholars, one of the people you exalt, you put on Time magazine, and he wrote this. He wrote a defense, an explicit defense of eugenics and sterilization, which is what was being argued at the Nuremberg trials. Was it wrong for them to forcibly sterilize hundreds of thousands of people? Now the US and the Western world said, of course it was wrong. But what's this? Who do you root for in this? Because you also had, and sorry, I have a few more things, but you think about how this affected immigration as well, because again, this is an embodiment of the white supremacy that was rampant at the time, and the nativism as well comes with it, because it's preserving the gene pool, and the same arguments we see today with the Great Replacement theory, that they need to have a better gene pool and not let in these Italians and this, that, and the third. And part of that as well was Jewish people were included in that. We don't want Jewish people in the United States. And so who are we not going to let in? We're not going to let in the Jewish people in Amsterdam trying to leave. No. Oh, Anne Frank's dad? No, you can't come to America. We have to preserve our gene pool. And so when the U.S. and anyone in history says, well, the great Americans fighting fascism and the Holocaust, we're responsible for a lot of those deaths. Now, you can run away from it, but if you're not letting people fleeing a country because of the same reasons that they're killing those same people, you're complicit. Same arguments used in Japanese internment. These great figures, unfortunately, they are white supremacists. I know that's not really shocking to a lot of people, but it is to some people. But we'll talk about FDR and the Korematsu case. And that's another one. Do you see how long I need for these, though? There's no way I could have done this in all of these. But this is what we got now. We're left with this. I don't know. The printer kind of screwed up a little bit up there, but anyway, we'll get to those. Well, I hope you enjoyed this really disturbing case. And I think it's important to keep in mind that this is still in the books, and we know how Republicans, at least especially right now, will go as far as they can go back. So don't be surprised if you see a surge. I mean, we already have a eugenics movement in the U.S. again, and it's only a few more steps until this becomes normal, or a normalized conversation to have. And again, once you're having those conversations, you're already kind of lost. You know, we've already kind of lost. Let me know what you guys think. And I'll see you guys with another awful case next time.